Hello and welcome to the Whistleblower. This is the program for the water polo community that focuses largely on arguably the most important facet of the game, and of course that is refereeing. My name is Ian Trent and joining me is today's panel from Australia's backpacker and COVID-19 spreader capital, Bondi Beach, Australian Water Polo's Director of Refereeing, and of course a former FINA referee, Phil Bauer. Good evening, Phil.
Good evening, Noel. Sorry, Ian. Hope we have a great program.
Noel's around. I hope we do too. From Australia's largest non-footy, non-cafe and non-pub capital. In fact, it's the lockdown capital of Australia, and that, of course, is our southern capital down there, Melbourne, Australia's leading referee, Daniel Flav. Hi, Danny.
Good evening, Ian and all. How are we all?
Very well, thank you. And from a place you can self-isolate and there's absolutely no difference from normal life. That is the nation's capital, Canberra. The former FINA referee and general manager of the National Water Polo League, Noel Harrod. Good evening, Noel.
Good evening, Ian. How are you? It's a balmy 2 degrees here in Canberra, so I'm actually in a t-shirt.
Right, and of course, I think on your screen you might be able to see John, but I'm going to introduce John just a little bit later, our special guest. And right now, I'm going to refer to Phil and ask him, what is the whistleblower all about? We've heard copious numbers of people around on social media talking about who is the whistleblower. What's the show all about?
Thanks, Ian. Well, the Whistleblower is a program that aims to educate the broader community in water polo about the rules and the interpretations of our games. We'll also try to keep our audience up to date with what is happening both in Australia and around the world. The program will be shown every fortnight on Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll have a different guest each fortnight, and the panel, apart from Ian, will be changing for each episode.
Of course, and that's unless you sack me. Okay, so hopefully it's going to be really informative and quite interesting. We invite questions from the audience, live questions, and non-live questions too, but live questions are fantastic. Noel, how does our audience ask a question?
So the easiest way to ask a question is to move your mouse across the screen, and you'll see there's a menu that comes at the bottom. You look at Q&A, second one from the centre of the panel in the centre. Click on there and you type in your question. We will see it, all the panellists will see it, and we will answer it during the night. It may not happen straight away because we might be doing something else. However, we will get to your question.
Okay, and Phil, we invite also feedback. If you love us, that's great. If you hate us, that's okay too, but we'd like to know about it. How does the audience do that?
Well, there's a number of ways, Ian. We'll show an email address at the end of the program. There's also the Water Polo Australia anywhere on social media, and an Instagram account which we started for Whistleblower Polo. So any of those medias, feel free to ask a question, give a suggestion on what we can do, who you'd like to see on the program.
Okay, somebody's already said something, and they love your background, Noel. I'm not sure I do. That is Leanne from Marimbula.
It was a very interesting day that day. I don't think I want to go into it.
No. Now, Phil, we love exclusives on this program. You've got one on episode 1.
Yes, Ian. So a few hours ago, FINA announced that the World Championships, which were due to be held in 2021, have been moved to May 13 to 29 in 2022 at Fukuoka, and the World Masters will be held in 2022 at the island of Kyushu from May 31st to June the 9th.
Okay, we're getting a team up for the Masters or what?
Noel can't swim.
Excuse me.
That is true, but Danny can.
I can swim better than Noel.
You'd be a bit old for our team, Phil, but I'm sure we can squeeze you in.
Thanks, Noel.
Okay, on the Whistleblower, now it's time for our special guest of the evening. And this man is the only Australian to referee an Olympic gold medal match. He's the former AW or Australian Water Polo Secretary General, or Secretary as he became. Also the former FINA TWPC, the Technical Water Polo Committee of FINA Secretary, was there for many years. And now he's back and a newly appointed board member of Australian Water Polo. It's a very big welcome to the show, John Whitehouse. Hi, John.
Hi, Ian. Thanks very much for the welcome.
And thanks for coming on to our first episode. Now, John, well, obvious question. Let's go back into the time tunnel. How did you start in water polo?
Well, I came from a swimming background, Ian, and I was getting tired of swimming, or swimming was getting tired of me, and I fell into a team sport that I very much enjoyed and has become part of my life from then. But I did actually still continue swimming for a few more years while still playing water polo. We're talking back in 1966, 1967.
Back in yards, not metres.
Yards then was, not metres. Times got a bit quicker when it went to metres.
Absolutely. Phil?
John, you're underrating yourself. I believe you actually made finals in national championships in swimming.
Yes, I did in 63. Made the 220 yards final in Adelaide at the old pool in the centre of the city.
Right, and you played a number of years for Tasmania. How close did you come to playing for Australia?
I played 8 years. Last year was in Perth in 1975, and I made a national squad in 71, but didn't actually, apart from making the squad, that was as close as I got.
And then you picked up the whistle and in those days the flags, is that correct?
Picked up the flags. I thought that if I did some refereeing, it would possibly improve my game. And it's a philosophy I still encourage young players still to have a good understanding of the rules. And I think the philosophy holds people well if they do have a good understanding of the rules if they're a player.
Right, just one more question from me, John. Tell us about your progression from when you first picked up a whistle, refereeing in Tasmania, became an Australian accredited referee, refereeing nationals, and then on to FINA. Wasn't like it is today, correct?
That's correct. I actually sat for a 3-hour examination paper in 1970. No rule books. Supervised by Roger Smith, who was later to become the Secretary of the Amateur Swimming Union of Australia and Vice President of FINA. He supervised the examination. I can't remember what the pass mark was at that time, but I got through. And then in 1972, the first year of the 20 and under championships, I refereed in Brisbane. I was playing in Brisbane at the senior championships at Musgrave, and I must admit Musgrave then and now look very little difference. And two evaluators who some people may remember were Sig Clewett from Queensland, an ex-Victorian, and Bob Traynor, who was a long-time secretary with New South Wales Water Polo.
One of our old favourites, John, Bob Traynor. Can somebody remember his nickname? Because I can, but I'm not game to say it.
I can too.
Say it. We love Bob. Okay, Daddy?
Then I actually progressed from there to being appointed to the 1973 FINA World Championships in Belgrade as what was then termed a C referee. They had various categories of referee at that time, C, B and A. And it was a very complicated system of progression from one to the other. And I'm pleased that they've did away with that after a period of time. But I think it may be on its way back.
John, did they, in those days, did they respect Australia as a water polo country? And as such, did you get the respect that you really should have?
I'd say no, Ian, to that question. I think they treated us well, but I don't think they treated us with a lot of respect, both from the playing sense or participation. It was only countless trips to Europe, very much led by Tom Hode, Peter Montgomery at a club level, and a few others, that we gained the respect of the Europeans over a period of time. And it was really through persistence and an improvement in our play.
Okay, one of the men who has respect now, Daniel, got a question?
Yes, John. Back in those days, Whitey, how did you go from C to B to A? How did they grade it?
Well, you had to referee with a FINA TWPC member present. He categorised the level of the game. The games were also rated as A, B or C. And to progress from one to the other, from C to B, you had to do so many B games or equivalent of B games at a satisfactory or good level to get from one to the other. Okay. And because it was a requirement that a FINA TWPC member had to be present, it could, particularly for people from outside Europe, it could take quite a long time to get through the progression up to an A referee, where clearly the quality of the games were much superior.
Okay, I think we can see John there shaking hands with Tom Hode at a Nationals. It's a fairly recent Nationals. Must be in Hobart, is it, John?
Was in Hobart, Ian. Wasn't.
Yeah. Okay, Noel?
So, John, how many Olympics did you referee and what was your highlight?
I refereed in 76 in Montreal. I didn't referee in 80 in Moscow. I was a team manager at that stage. 84 in Los Angeles, 88 in Seoul and 92 in Barcelona. Oh, there's no question that the highlight was Seoul in being appointed to referee the final game with Eugenio Asensio from Spain. It was a game between Yugoslavia and USA. Quite a closely contested game. And it was an exciting experience, not only to do the game, but also referee with one of the best referees in the world.
So, John, the experience and the preparation to referee a gold medal game between two great countries, the first non-European to referee an Olympic gold medal, and the game went to overtime. What was that like?
Oh, a wonderful experience, Noel. One that I'll never forget. Also, I won't forget that both coaches came up to me, both the winning and losing coach, and thanked me for the game, which gave me a great deal of satisfaction.
Absolutely. Now, John, you can see behind me, you'd look at very nicely at that my Seoul Olympic poster there.
I think I've got one very similar to that. Ian.
Yeah, I was going to offer it to you, but you don't need it. I called the game for Channel 10. I was lucky enough. That's another life experience going to those Olympics. They were absolutely unbelievable. And the audience, it being just the Channel 10 crew for a start, because I wasn't aware of too much apart from them, was so excited about an Australian refereeing this game between two powerhouse water polo nations. They didn't know much about polo, but they were so excited about it. I think hopefully it came over on the commentary. Okay, more questions for John. Phil?
Yeah, I've got one. Just going back a little bit before the Olympics, John, you went on a number of overseas tours. For our younger referees listening, can you tell them the compensation you got?
I toured with the team as a referee in 1973 to Belgrade, 75 to Cali in Colombia. Why FINA ever put them in Cali in Colombia, heaven knows. 78 to Berlin, West Berlin as it then was. 79 to the Spartakiad in Russia, and 1980. All those trips I funded myself. But it was no different to the team members. They funded themselves at that stage as well. There was no support, or we didn't have the funds to support the team or the officials that were attending. And it wasn't actually until 1984, Los Angeles, when my airfare was paid. That was the first trip that I got some reimbursement towards my costs.
Now, John, it's always been on my crawl. You think the fact that the players had to pay their own way up till 84 or whatever it was, right, around those mid-80s period, do you think it made them appreciate what they got or the experience rather than having it all laid on like they do now?
I think they were different tours, Ian, in that time. I think there was more enjoyment associated with them, knowing that everybody contributed. If there was success, that everybody contributed that success both personally and financially. And they are actually a source of great memories for me. And in discussion with Tom and Peter Montgomery and the likes, they hold very fond memories for me.
Well, you and anybody else probably that went on one of those trips. I remember our big trip in 1986, exactly the similar sentiments. Okay, Noel?
So, John, I want to ask you an interesting question. It's a bit of a Dawn Fraser type question. At the end of the final in Seoul, did you get any mementos? I know in Athens 2004, Petronelli and Alain Bolfenbayo accidentally stumbled on a ball each from the game, and they kept that as a memento. I was wondering if you had any from your gold medal match.
No, I didn't know. Didn't receive anything, not a ball, not a flag, nothing.
No worries.
But I had a very enjoyable time in Seoul. I shared the flat in the village that I was in with Chirunas from Latvia and Troitsky from Russia. They tried to get me to have a drink with them every night. Maybe Danny should have been there instead of me.
I hope it wasn't in those bottles that don't have labels that come out of bags.
They came out of the pockets with the dried fish that they brought from Russia. I relented one night, much to my misfortune the next day.
Okay, Daniel, anything to go on with that one?
Oh, they were the good old days, John, obviously. Just also, John, how has the referees' instructions changed from back in your days to now, from the TWPC?
Oh, I think they're much better now, Danny, actually. I think it started to change in the late 90s. And then when the advent of the FINA Water Polo School for Referees in 2002 started, remembering that water polo was the first discipline to establish that. Now all the other FINA disciplines have their own various schools. I think it's much better, the instructions, much more succinct. Whether the message gets across, I'm not too sure at times, but certainly the endeavour is there, and my understanding is that's continued under the with the new committee as well.
Now, John, weren't you a school teacher?
Yes, I was. Science and maths, Ian.
Yeah, and how did you end up running Australian water polo?
Well, I took over from Keith Wegar being the secretary of the Australian Water Polo Committee, which was a subcommittee of the Amateur Swimming Union of Australia. We held an annual meeting, of course, once a year. That's a tautology, isn't it? In 1977. The chair of that was one of the office bearers of the Amateur Swimming Union of Australia, and that stayed in place until we separated from the Amateur Swimming Union in 1982, when we became an incorporated body, Australian Water Polo Incorporated. I became secretary of that. Peter Montgomery was the treasurer. He finished in 85, and then I went on to be Secretary General, which was effectively CEO, but having the Treasurer's responsibilities as well, from then until September 2011.
Okay.
It was an honorary position up until September 1990, and it became a paid position from September 1990 onwards.
Right. Okay. So that's a long, long time. Did you enjoy it? You must have. Must have been your life.
It became my life.
Okay.
I enjoyed it, and I think, and I could say that I'm relatively pleased with the way that water polo developed. But we had good people. Not only me, we had people like Harry Quitner from Victoria, a lovely person who travelled with the teams on many occasions. Peter Montgomery, Tom Hode, Ian Mills, also from Victoria. We had a lot of good people at that time. So I was fortunate, I believe.
Okay, Phil?
Yeah, John, you've already answered one of my questions, because I used to ring you up and I used to get a bit overwhelmed with talking to a Secretary General, but you've described what that position is. But what's the highlight of those many years running water polo? What's the highlight for you?
I think there are a few, Phil. One was the success that the women's team achieved in 1995 at the FINA World Cup in Sydney, Australia. Originally, it was scheduled to be held the World Cup was scheduled to be held in conjunction with the Men's World Cup in Atlanta, and the USA dropped the pin on it, and I put in a bid from Australia. It was given to Australia, and then Cornell Marculescu did everything to try and take it away. But I wrote individual letters to every bureau member explaining the sequence of events, and the event ended up being held in Australia at the new Olympic pool out at Homebush. Australia won the tournament. It was very successful, and I believe was the final catalyst in women's water polo being recognised on the Olympic program. So I consider that to be an achievement. It incurred considerable cost to us at that stage as an organisation, nearly 200,000 down, but in terms of the rewards that were reaped by not only Australia but by all countries, with the advent of the women's water polo getting on the Olympic program, it was money well spent. Secondly, the only good thing to come out of Australia not qualifying in 1996 in Berlin at the qualification tournament, the men's team, was that I was able to convince my fellow members on the FINA TWPC that having a situation as we had in Atlanta with 11 European teams and one team outside Europe, which was the host, effectively a European championship, which was no good for water polo at all worldwide. And they agreed to continental representation, which means that we're in the very, very fortunate position, both in men's and women's water polo, that we effectively really only have to beat New Zealand to qualify for the Olympic Games now. And I hope that situation doesn't change. The other highlight, unquestionably, was the women winning the Olympic final in 2000 before a packed house of 17,000 people at the Sydney Olympic Aquatic Centre. And the other thing that I take a little bit of credit for is the rise of China in women's water polo and my involvement with them in 2008, particularly in arranging for them to participate in our National Women's Water Polo League, and the importance that they've played in Asia now as being a successful women's team.
Okay, well, I can tell you helped us along, Leanne and I, and Leanne's on the line, to the 1986 gold medal, World Championship gold medal too, John. There was an annoying little fellow who I'm sitting next to that used to ring you up daily and was very annoying, and you handled him okay. Now, you mentioned the TWPC, the Technical Water Polo Committee. How did you become the secretary? It's a pretty powerful position, and obviously you threw your weight around.
I think I was a little bit more gentle than that, Ian. I went on to the TWPC in 1992. Peter Montgomery was appointed to the committee for a further 4 years as secretary in 1992, but through a series of circumstances, he was unable to continue, and he asked me one day in Barcelona whether I'd be interested in taking his position on the TWPC, not as secretary, but as a member. And he said to me, I've got 30 minutes to make up my mind. I took the 30 minutes in total and agreed to that. And then it was a culmination of things in Atlanta. Australia had secured the 1998 World Championships. We were going to host the Men's World Cup in '99 and also host the 2000 Olympic Games. And it made sense, well, to the FINA Bureau at that stage, that to have an Australian as secretary. And I was appointed secretary in Atlanta in 1996, a position which I held to 2017, 21 years in all.
Okay, you should be very proud of that, John. Absolutely. Now, I've got a question from Glenn Piper, who asks, and Danny, you come in on this, how do you manage to get to be appointed to the Olympic Games? Danny, how were you Well, let's go back into history first. John, I could probably say from my point of view, there wasn't anybody else, and you were right up there with the best of them. But tell me how it happened.
You're probably right, there wasn't anybody else. But even at that stage, if you had a team participating, you were eligible to nominate a referee. And you still are, although the FINA TWPC has taken over that responsibility, whilst the country is eligible to have a referee present, they take the responsibility of nominating the referee. Actually, Phil Bauer, who's on the panel this evening, refereed in Sydney along with Peter Kerr when we were eligible to have 2 referees at that time. But from then on, it's been 1 referee, and the FINA TWPC has nominated that person.
Well, you should be very happy with that, Danny, if they've singled you out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very privileged to be actually nominated by TWPC to officiate at any water polo games.
Right, we've got a couple of people who want to know from John, the best referee you've seen from Australia, and you've got a few of them on the panel tonight, so don't worry about them. Don't put your hand up. That ain't going to happen. Okay, John, let's go back again in the time tunnel, or you can do the current crop. Who's the best from Australia you've seen?
Well, sorry, Phil, I'm not nominating you. Or you, Noel.
Oh! That's because of that grand final in New Norfolk, I know.
No, I'd forgotten about that until you raised that, but probably you gave me good ammunition, though. Oh, no, I think Peter Kerr was a very good referee, had a good understanding of the game, played at a very high level. Someone I'd call a reluctant referee. And I think, and I'm not saying it because he's on the panel, Danny has been an excellent referee over a long period of time. And I'd rank them very, very similar in terms of
Collingwood supporter, are you?
Nothing to do with it being a Collingwood supporter.
Okay, from Michael from the Northern Beaches, the best referee, John, that you've seen internationally, not an Australian?
I think without question it'd be Cornel Marculescu, who was a Romanian water polo player, went on to be an international referee of quite considerable stature, refereed the Australian Championships here. Peter Montgomery brought him out in 1976 in Sydney. I think unquestionably he would be possibly the best, but for me, Eugenio Asensio from Spain, who I refereed with in 1998 in Seoul, and through a series of circumstances, I refereed a game with in Barcelona, the bronze medal game between the United States and the combined independent states, which were the ex-Russian affiliates. I refereed a game with him there. He was an excellent referee. Very, very good.
Yes.
Very understandable, both, I think, to the public and to the players. But put in a tremendous amount of time. He was a school teacher, not unlike myself, mathematics school teacher, and went down to his club Barcelona every evening and refereed practice games, and did that for years and years on end.
Right, referee as much as you can. Good tip for all referees. John, a couple of people also want to know the best player you've ever seen? Just one word answer because we're under the pump for time.
I would put Gianni De Magistris from Italy.
Ooh.
Right.
With a very close second, Manuel Estiarte, who played in 5 Olympic Games for Spain. Both attacking players, drivers, probably lending myself more to the forwards and not giving the defenders enough credit or goalkeepers enough credit, but both were exciting players. Give them inside water and they would create a goal.
Best Australian male player?
Ooh.
I couldn't go past Charles Turner. He was at a level, I think, above all others as a player. Again, an attacking player. Defence was a bit sloppy. Was never keen on going back downhill, but had tremendous natural talent. And again, you gave Charlie inside water, he'd score. But a man that I couldn't leave out would be Andrew Kerr, just to acknowledge him. And as has been said on many occasions, had a heart as big as Far Laps and was an unbelievable player for Australia over a long period of time.
Best female player?
Bridget Gustafson.
From Perth?
From Perth. Some may think that's strange. And some would say, why not Debbie Hanley from Queensland? Unfortunately, although I was involved with water polo, I really only saw Debbie at the national level. I didn't see her play internationally, so maybe not giving her quite the respect she deserves, but she was a great player. But Bridget Gustafson, for me, was an outstanding player, outstanding centre forward, and epitomised by the game against Russia at the Ride Pool in 2000, when she delivered the winning goal with seconds to go that took the team into the gold medal game against the USA.
Great players. I did coach Debbie for Debbie Cummins, as she became, for 6 years. I can tell you, John, she was a heck of a player. You want her on your side, not playing against her. Thank you very much.
I'd agree with you there, Ian.
You saw her dominate at state level. She dominated at international level too. Now, we've got a little embarrassing moment. Maybe you could enlighten us. Do you know which one we're going to bring up?
I'm not too sure. It could be a few.
If you have a look now, where's this one, John?
That's at the Glenorchy Pool in 1979. I was refereeing with Ronnie Fingleton. Fingles was a player that had played with Queensland but took up the flag. And it was during the final of the game on national television. And I just stepped forward, not there being no ramp or anything. I just held onto the whistle in my mouth and kept blowing it as I went in the water. Still had it in my mouth when I came out and continued on with the rest of the game.
Well done.
That is from the Trent photography book. I tell you what, I looked for a week to find that photo, John. I had to do it. That was very memorable. Now,
I reminded my fellow referees in Kazan when we were talking about refereeing, when the FINA TWPC were meeting with the referees, I referred to that incident and also starting the game without the ball, getting to the centre of the field of play and realising I didn't have a ball.
We've all done that.
that'll do it. We've all done that, haven't we? Danny, you've done that, haven't you?
Absolutely.
That can happen to the best of us. John?
Referees forget their cards as well.
Now, gentlemen, I'll send you that photo, John. We are under the pump for time. Now, Phil, this is a question that Phil just loves to. We've done a few demo shows. Phil loves this question.
John, I'm not quite sure. Can you tell me, did you ever referee at Dawn Fraser Pool?
No, I didn't.
The question, unfortunately, is moot. So I'll ask you another one. What's the best pool in Australia, apart from Dawn Fraser?
You needed to put that little rider on it, Phil, did you?
Yeah, it's over my shoulder, mate, if you've never seen it.
No, I think the Sydney Aquatic Centre. But for scenic aspects and position, you can't go past the pool at Bicton.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
I hate to interrupt, but there's one question I've always wanted to ask John.
Do it in public.
And there's been a lot of questions I've asked him over the years and the help and support. But apart from the 2000 Olympics gold medal game for the women, which is clearly the greatest game that's ever been in Olympic water polo, what's the next best Olympic gold medal game you've ever seen?
Oh, that's a hard one, Noel. I think one of the more exciting games was '96 when Spain, after a considerable period of time being around the top level of water polo, was successful in actually winning the gold in Atlanta in '96. I think that game holds fond memories for me. But really, when you're coming to Olympic gold medals, they're such good games. It's very hard to distinguish. Croatia's win in London in 2012 was excellent. The Dutch hijacking the United States in the women's in Beijing in 2008, with De Bruyne scoring seven goals. They're all good games, Noel.
Thanks, John.
Like I said, we're under the pump, John, but I've got a really good question from a bloke I used to work for who's come up out of nowhere and not even involved in polo. John, a question. As a former science teacher, you're obligated to look at the evidence and not the emotion. With that in mind, what is the best progression you have seen in the game over the years? Good question.
Excellent question. I think the movement in the game, the physical fitness of the players, the skill of the players, that's occurred over the period of time that I've been involved. But there were great players going back, and De Magistris from Italy was in the 80s, Estiati in the late 80s and 90s. Each period of time, there's been great players and great exponents of the game. But I think the skill of the current players outshines what occurred in the past. We look back with a little bit of rose-coloured glasses, I think, in terms of the past, and don't really give enough credit to the quality of the players that are now participating in the game.
Okay, as I said, we're under the pump, but I'm enjoying it, so let's do it. Richard from Brisbane, what qualities do you look for, John, when you identify younger referees? And who do you think might progress to higher honours? What are you looking for in a young referee to succeed?
I think a knowledge of the game. To me, it helps having been a player. I felt that I was always, when I was refereeing, I was always anticipating what the next move was going to be, and probably following that positional play. And I don't think you can do that without having played the game. So I think, and you don't have to be a good player. I think having played the game and having a good knowledge of the game, and then having a good knowledge of the rules, I think they're attributes that you need to have in your armoury if you're going to be a quality referee.
John, are you aware of the effect or the influence, better word, that you've had on nearly every good referee that's been in Australia for the last 30 years? Because when you talk to people, and I know people on this panel, they bring up your name all the time when they're talking about the basics of refereeing and how you influence them. Are you aware of that influence that you've had over the years?
No, I think you've been too generous in your comments there, Ian.
I don't think so.
I hope it's true.
Noel?
John's the biggest impact on my life as a referee. He talked me into refereeing. Sorry for all those coaches out there when I was living in Hobart. So he's the one to blame. But yeah, I wouldn't have got anywhere, never got to the Olympics, nothing without John. He's a very modest person, but best mentor I ever had in my life. I feel myself very blessed to have known him, quite frankly, and that's quite honest.
Danny, you bring John's name up quite a bit.
Always, Ian. I think at any level of refereeing, when Whitey speaks, we all listen so closely and take on board everything he says.
And Phil doesn't listen to too many people, but I think he listens to John.
I do listen to John, although we've had a few run-ins over our many years knowing each other. But I know when I was a coach, if someone asked me who I wanted to referee, it was John. There was no one else.
Ian, I'd like to say one more thing, if I may, and I know Danny especially will agree with me. When John used to speak at technical water polo committee meetings, all the referees listened because they saw him as a great referee. Would you agree, Danny? The respect was enormous.
That's correct, Noel. After we have our meetings, all the international overseas referees always state how well Whitey speaks and how they listen to what he says.
Absolutely. And from a coach's point of view, back in the old days, I recall you'd sweat on who you were going to get as a referee. And if it wasn't John, well, I, for one, would have a major problem with the integrity of the game and the outcome. And we had to be probably double. But I knew the one thing, John, you're always straight down the middle. And that was basically the most important thing.
Thanks very much for those comments.
Okay, when with those comments, John, we have to leave it here. We are under the pump. Please remain on the panel and we'll bring you in on our next topic, which, of course, this is the game time segment. And we're looking at rule interpretations, and we will do every show. And the one that everybody is, well, there's conjecture over every game, penalty situations. Let's have a look at a video of Australian centre forward Joe Kays. Beam me up, Scotty. Here it comes. Now, Danny, can you take us through this?
Sure.
The ball now.
As we go there, okay, as you can see there, Joe has the ball in his hand inside the 5 metre, facing the goal. So he's full on facing the goal with a defender behind him. Even though he has a defender maybe a metre away, which is more than an arm's reach away, he's fouled from behind. It has to be a penalty. That defender on the side was never going to block the shot.
Now,
So
Danny, what was the result?
Unfortunately, in that situation, it was play on. Nothing rewarded.
Hungary called a timeout and then got possession of the ball and shot a goal, didn't they, Danny?
Within 7 seconds. And that was the end of the game.
And that was the ball game.
Yep.
Joe scores, we win.
Correct.
Should have been a penalty. Once again, diddled.
Yes.
And it made the difference of not qualifying for the semi-final.
I think one of the very disappointing things, and I'm sure you'll agree, John, is that both referees could see it. As you can see, the backcourt referees come all the way down to the 6 metre. So both referees could clearly see it. That's the disappointing part. One of them should have called it.
And also, it must be noted that both those referees were benched for the rest of the World Champs.
Right, and so they should have been. Now, there's a defender in the vicinity, Daniel.
Yes.
And this is another contentious issue. Take us through it. Where's that extra defender who...
Okay, we have the defender on Joe's right. He's to the side of him, but he's not within arm's reach of Joe or any other taker in that situation. So there is no chance of that defender blocking the shot. So he's fouled from behind. So we can't say that that defender is close enough to block the shot. So we have to call a penalty 100% of the time.
Okay. Now, and basically he is to the side. He's at 180 degrees.
Yep.
Right. And that if he fouls and he's within that metre, it's a penalty.
Penalty.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. And if he's in front, goal side, in any way,
it's play on.
It's play on.
Yes, because he's in front of the ball.
Right.
Can you just go through that again, Danny? If he is in front of the player or within, half a metre and closer to the goal.
And that's where a goal would not have probably been scored. So we can't say it's going to be a penalty.
What's the decision if, in this instance, the defender was inside Joe and Joe's got the ball in his hand and he gets fouled from behind? What is the decision? In
that scenario, it's play on because there's a defender in front where a goal would not have been scored, and Joe's actually holding the ball, so we can't call a penalty because the defender's in front, and we can't call an extra or exclude the defender because Joe's holding the ball.
So if Joe just had front water, put the ball on the water, and got fouled from behind with the defender within a metre, exclusion?
Exclusion, correct.
Right. Okay.
It's all about the position of where that second defender is. And in this scenario, that defender wasn't close enough to be deemed as him able to block the shot.
The scenario of centre forward turning the player with the ball in his hand, when does it become a penalty situation?
Okay.
Can it ever be a kick out when he has the ball in his hand?
It will never be a kick out and can't be a kick out if he's holding the ball. Okay, it has to be a penalty if he's fully facing the goal, or it's nothing. So what we're saying now is if the centre forward turns the centre back and is then facing the goal and is fouled from behind, that is a penalty. If the centre forward turns to his backhand and puts the ball in front of the goals, but is not facing the face onto the goals, it can't be a penalty. If he lets go of the ball, it has to be an exclusion because he's not facing front on to the goals.
Quick action there. Now, the other matter that's the crowd find it really hard to know what's going on is when the player with front water is driving in outside the post. So there's a nasty angle to deal with. Right, say, we've got no markings there. Mm-hmm. Right, outside the post, what happens?
Well, this is very hard for a referee to call. But what the TWPC has said of lately is they've created a zone. So if the attacking player has front water and is 1 metre from the goal post and he is fouled from behind, that's the penalty. Okay, if he's outside that 1 metre and he's fouled, it's nothing because he's holding the ball. If he's outside that 1 metre zone, shooting in, let's go of the ball, it's an exclusion. So they've created this 1 metre zone from the goal post. So if they're within that 1 metre and they're inside front water and they're fouled from behind, it's a penalty.
Right, we haven't got a vision of it, Phil, but when I say outside the goal post, right, that means to the left or the right, outside the goal post. Okay. but that is a hard one for the crowd. Any
It's
other
very
comments
hard.
from our panel? No, they're all in agreement. This is good. Okay. Cross cage pass from, let's say, left-hander's side straight across to a right-hander, right? They can score if they get the ball, fouled from behind. But it's a bad pass. It's too high, but they still get fouled and they would have scored for sure.
Okay, so very early in my refereeing career, I was told this from Whitey. As we said, we always listen, and his words of wisdom were, never reward a bad pass. So in this scenario, they're passing from one side of the goals across the face of goals to, let's say, the attacker on 2 metres and the defender's behind. Even though the attacker may be pulled down, but if it's a bad pass where the attacker wouldn't be able to reach the ball, then we can't reward that situation. Okay, it's a bad pass. We can't even do it a kick out because it's a bad pass. And that's what we've always been told. We never reward a bad pass.
Okay, let's hope that that's enlightened our audience. It's certainly enlightened our panel, I'm sure. Now, as we've been saying, we're really under the pump for time, and this is going to finish us off for tonight, I believe. But it's a game we've mentioned, the grand final gold medal game in 2000. And let's go from the vault. Okay, I'll say it again. Beam us up, Scotty. From the vault, we're just about to see Yvette Higgins's Olympic final winner.
I think they're having some technical problems in the Northern Beaches with their non-NBN, Ian.
I think we have. Phil, maybe we should leave that for another day, although
Good idea.
I tell you, well, we've got maybe a couple of minutes. Here it is.
Here we go.
There's Yvette. Bang. We'll roll it again. I have 10 seconds to answer this question. All right. Let's see if Yvette can score again. We get a better picture of the... No. Well, we saw a score. Okay. John, you were at the game?
Certainly was, Ian.
Was it a goal? There's been a bit of conjecture about it.
She was certainly outside the 7 metres. If that was a criteria, well, it shouldn't be a goal. There's no doubt that she was outside 7 metres.
Okay, goal for you. Noel, you were there. How'd you see it? Here it is.
I think, as I've said to you before, I was very lucky. I was standing with Paul Oberman behind the women's bench at the time, the Australian team. And it's clearly a goal. The 2 referees were very well in control. They knew what was happening. Okay, there can be some discussions whether Bridget had a goal earlier than that, but ignoring that, clearly it was a goal, and it was a young 19-year-old girl who knew what was going on, got the ball, shot, maybe the greatest moment in Olympic history in water polo, certainly the greatest moment in Australian history. Absolutely.
Bill, you and I have coached that young lady, and we both agree it's not in her DNA not to shoot that ball. She knew what time it was, but even if she didn't, she was going to ping it.
100%, yeah. She was going to shoot. Probably practiced that shot 1,000 times. Every time. No one on her. She gets the ball, she shoots. She shot for Sydney Uni. She shot for Balmain. She shot for New South Wales. Same situation. Yeah.
She played for Tasmania as a draft player.
The 16-year-old.
16 and unders in Brisbane.
Yeah.
It wasn't the same year that Maureen O'Toole flew in and out, was it, for Tasmania?
No, that was 1988, Noel. She was a great player too.
She was. Coached against her many times. And she's a good coach as well for Drummoyne. Right now, John. So, and staying around, I believe. Okay. Any other comments about that game, gentlemen? Daniel?
I think that the problem was a lot of people didn't really understand the new rule, the outside 7 metre rule, and that's why it was so confusing to everyone about what was going on.
Okay.
I think also the referees are frightened about 15,000 people attacking them after the game.
17,000.
17,000.
It's an unbelievable crowd. And no doubt we will talk a little bit more about it with our guest for next time. And that's in a fortnight, Monday fortnight, where I believe we're going to talk to, as a special guest, the beautiful Elizabeth Weeks, who played in that game as a goalkeeper and was a fine representative for Australia. Gentlemen, that just about takes us out. We've probably knocked off a few segments, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it. John, thank you very much for your insight into the game. We have really enjoyed your company. Gentlemen, fantastic. A big thank you to Scotty Schweikel, who's done a lot of pre-production, James Falzon. Anybody else we'd like to thank, Phil?
I think that's about it. We'll have different people next week you can thank, Ian.
Different people next week. Okay.
Next fortnight, sorry.
Gentlemen, and to our audience and all those people who sent through questions, I've got Lance from Queensland. Yeah, Lance from Queensland. He will play in the Masters with us. So we get our own team up, eh? And we'll see you in a fortnight. Thank you for being on episode 1 of The Whistleblower.